What if I told you that the one thing he thought would guarantee respect in the UK was the very thing that made people quietly ignore him? When Jason Miller stepped off the plane at Heathrow, he carried more than 2 suitcases and a designer briefcase. He carried confidence, the loud, polished, self-assured kind that had worked perfectly back home in Texas. Back there, money talked. Money opened doors. Money made people lean in when you spoke. And Jason had money, a 6-figure salary in finance, a leased German car, a watch that cost more than most people's monthly rent. In America, that meant something. In America, that meant status. So when his company transferred him to London for what he proudly called an international expansion leadership opportunity, he assumed one thing: they were lucky to have him. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. On his first day in the London office, Jason walked in wearing a tailored navy suit and that heavy gold watch peeking out just enough to be noticed. He expected glances, he expected whispers, he expected curiosity. What he got instead was a polite nod from the receptionist. "Morning," she said calmly, barely looking up. He waited half a second longer than normal, giving her a chance to register his presence. Nothing. He cleared his throat slightly. "Hi, Jason Miller. I'm the new senior strategy consultant from the US." "Oh, lovely," she replied. "You'll want the 3rd floor. Lifts to your right. No follow-up question. No welcome aboard energy." Jason felt the first tiny crack in his expectations. Upstairs, the office atmosphere was different, quieter, controlled. People worked without dramatic gestures. No one talked about their bonuses. No one talked about their cars. In fact, when he overheard 2 colleagues chatting, they were discussing weekend hiking plans and complaining about the weather. The weather. Not investments. Not promotions. Not salaries. Weather. By lunch, Jason decided to assert himself. He joined a group in the break room. "So what do you guys usually do around here for fun?" he asked casually, leaning against the counter. "Back home, I'm usually at private member clubs. Bit of networking, bit of golf. You know how it is." They looked at him. Polite smiles. One guy, Oliver, stirred his tea. "Oh right, sounds busy." Jason chuckled. "Yeah, well, when you're making good money, you've got to enjoy it." There it was, the subtle flex, the opening. In America, someone would have asked, "How much do you make?" or "That's impressive," or at least, "Must be nice." Instead, Oliver took a sip of tea and said, "Anyway, did you finish the Henderson file?" That was the first time he felt it clearly. They didn't care. Over the next week, Jason tried again and again. Casual references to his Manhattan condo, stories about expensive steak dinners, a passing comment about how healthcare in the US was top tier if you can afford it. Every time, the reaction was the same. Polite nod. Topic change. One afternoon, during a team meeting, he decided to go bigger. "I think what this team needs," he said confidently, "is a more competitive mindset. Back in the States, we reward top performers properly. Bigger bonuses, bigger incentives. That's how you motivate people." Silence. Then his manager, Sarah, adjusted her glasses. "That's an interesting perspective, Jason," she said evenly. "But here we focus more on balance and long-term sustainability. People are motivated by different things." He smiled tightly. "Sure, but money's universal." A few people exchanged glances, the one that says something without saying anything. After the meeting, Oliver caught up with him in the hallway. "Can I give you a bit of friendly advice?" Oliver asked. "Sure. You don't have to talk about money all the time." Jason blinked. "I don't talk about it all the time." Oliver gave him a look that was almost amused. "You do a bit." Jason laughed it off. "In the US, it's normal. It shows ambition." Jason felt a flicker of irritation. Something else? What did that mean? Weeks passed, he noticed something uncomfortable. People were friendly, but distant. He wasn't being invited to after-work drinks. Conversations stopped when he approached. Not rudely, he told himself it was jealousy. "They can't relate," he muttered, one night in his expensive London flat. Different level. Then came the dinner. The company hosted a small gathering at a traditional pub. Dim lights, wooden beams, laughter echoing off old brick walls. Jason saw this as his opportunity to finally establish his status socially. He ordered the most expensive whiskey on the menu. "Put a few bottles on my tab," he said loudly enough for the group to hear. "Drinks on me." In America, that would have sealed it. Instant admiration. But here, Sarah smiled politely. "That's kind, Jason, but you don't need to do that." "It's nothing," he waved. "I can afford it." The table went slightly quiet. One woman, Emma, leaned back and said calmly, "Most of us can." The sentence landed harder than any insult. Most of us can. Not impressed, not intimidated, not envious. Equal. Jason felt his chest tighten. He had assumed they earned less, assumed his American salary automatically placed him above them. But London finance professionals? Senior consultants? Many of them came from old money. Quiet wealth, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. That night, for the first time, Jason noticed something. Oliver wore a simple watch, no logo visible, but when Jason looked closer, he recognized the craftsmanship. It was likely worth more than his gold one. No one talked about it. No one needed to. The turning point came a week later during a client presentation. Jason decided to take charge and impress everyone with his aggressive pitch style. He interrupted colleagues. He emphasized projected revenue gains repeatedly. At one point, he said to the client, "With the kind of capital you're working with, you can easily afford to double this investment." The room shifted. The British client's smile thinned. After the meeting, Sarah pulled him aside. "You can't say things like that," she said quietly. "Why? It's true. It's not about whether it's true, it's about tone. Discretion matters here." He frowned. "So we're supposed to pretend money doesn't matter?" She held his gaze. "No, we just don't worship it." That sentence echoed in his head long after she walked away. We don't worship it. Jason started observing more carefully. Colleagues who took the tube instead of showing off cars. Managers who left at 5:30 to pick up their children. Conversations about books, travel, football, art. No one bragged. No one compared salaries. Status existed, but it was understated. Education, wit, composure, cultural awareness. Not loud wealth. The final blow came unexpectedly. At another pub gathering, Jason tried a different approach. He toned down the bragging. But when the topic turned to housing prices, he slipped. "Well, my place back in New York is worth about—" Emma interrupted gently. "Jason, do you ever talk about anything else?" It was tired. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar. Embarrassment. Not because someone insulted him, but because he realized he had been trying so hard to impress people who simply measured value differently. He walked home alone that night through the quiet London streets. No one staring at his watch. No one caring about his salary. Just another man in a city of millions. And something shifted. He thought about his constant need to mention numbers, to anchor his identity to income. In America, he had learned early that success equals visibility. You show it, you signal it, you make sure people know. But here, respect seemed to come from humility, from competence, from subtle confidence. Money wasn't irrelevant. It just wasn't a personality. The next Monday, Jason did something different. In a meeting, he asked questions instead of giving answers. At lunch, he listened. When someone mentioned their holiday plans, he engaged without redirecting the conversation to himself. Weeks passed. Gradually, the distance softened. Oliver invited him for a pint. Emma asked about his move to London, not his salary, but how he was adjusting. For the first time, Jason talked about missing home, about feeling out of place. And strangely, that was the moment they seemed to connect. Not when he bought drinks, not when he dominated meetings, but when he stopped performing. One evening, sitting quietly in the pub, Jason looked around. Laughter. Conversation. No one competing. No one flexing. He finally understood. In the UK, wealth whispers, and people respect the whisper far more than the shout. Money can open doors anywhere in the world. But it can't force admiration. It can't manufacture cultural understanding. And it definitely can't buy authenticity. Jason had arrived thinking he was ahead of everyone. He stayed long enough to realize he had a lot to learn. And maybe that was the real promotion. So, here's the question for you. Do you think money should automatically command respect, or does culture decide what truly matters? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear both American and British perspectives on this. And if you've ever experienced culture shock abroad, share your story. Because sometimes the biggest flex is